Let me walk you through what is diabetes, what actually talk about like lifestyle habits to improve it and how to actually reverse. So let's start our presentation. So that reversible. And we are going to start of talking about what is. So diabetes is basically like a condition where natural insulin cannot function properly or insufficient amount than our body needs. We have two main types of diabetes. We have type 1 diabetes, more dangerous of the two. And this is where the pancreas like can no longer make insulin or like they make insufficient insulin to get the job done. Now, diabetes is unfortunately an autoimmune disease. So in our pancreas, we have the beta cells. So the beta cells are the ones responsible for pumping insulin. Our body, when we have type 1 diabetes, our body mistakes as a threat and our body will attack the beta cells in the pancreas until they are destroyed because they mistake them for cells. And that's how people type 1 diabetes. So it's an auto disease. Now, there is one other way to get diabetes, and this is probably very for someone who have type 2 diabetes at this moment. So when we have 2 diabetes, we tend to secrete more insulin than we need, to get the job. So if insulin, we secrete this much insulin to get the same job done. Over time, lead to the beta cells getting damaged and exhausted, so they no longer can make sufficient amounts of insulin. So that will again to type 1 diabetes. So like if you have type 2 diabetes, what you eat, push your beta cells harder, and harder. They are going exhausted and they will stop working. Go from type 2 diabetes to type 1 diabetes, which, as we all know, requires insulin injections. Now, one we are most interested about is diabetes. Diabetes, our body create insulin, but not in adequate. So it will basically secrete way more insulin than we need done, which will elevate our blood sugar level much more than they need to be. And this is basically to insulin resistance in the first place, because like people say pre-diabetes, but pre-diabetic means having, and when having insulin resistance, will not take up or soak up the nutrients, especially glucose from the bloodstream, so they are resistant against it. So the pancreas need to pump more and more insulin to get the job done. Say from two-folds more, and over time it will keep where your body need to make insulin to get the same amount of blood glucose within. That causes type 2 diabetes long run. Now, for the next slide, we will take a look at about whether this is hereditary, lifestyle habit, combination of both. Before we start talking about the habits, let's talk about the thing which I think is an excuse, more or less. Now, it's not false, but yes, it is true. So there are some people who have position to have diabetes. If you watched in one of the lives, I mentioned how like beta cell hypertrophy will lead basically to having diabetes. And beta cells hypertrophy, so again, beta cells are the cells in the pancreas that produce insulin, and they stop growing at about the age a kid and like you have diabetes in your family and you are eating sugar and like sugary food and tons of carbs, basically like, keep working more and more and they will hypertrophy. They will grow bigger in size and bigger cells will lead to you having diabetes in life. So yes, the genetic part is some people are unfortunately more predisposed, but that doesn't mean they will have it. And the main factor is actually lifestyle habits. So let's take a look at the habits that cause diabetes. Here is an interesting one. Consuming meals containing high carbs and fats at the same time. So consuming meals containing high carbs by itself could be problematic, but it's not nearly as problematic as mixing high carbs and high fats at the same time because that, like the fats, will basically form a layer around the cells, make it more difficult to uptake glucose from the blood. So that will make our body produce more and more insulin. And we will have very high amounts of insulin, high amounts of blood glucose, high amounts of fat. And so the cells are not willing to take any of that levels elevated for how insulin will do instead, it will shuttle those fats and glucose cells rather than the muscle cells as energy. So you get resistance and you get fat or like more or less instant fat storage from this combination. And this will be your typical Western food, Italian, maybe pasta, lasagna. These are like worst on the menu. Then we take out burgers, chips, sweets, cakes. All of these are very, very bad food combinations. And yeah, they are not the best to eat. Now, let me make a distinction here. So we said combining high carbs and fats at the time. By fats here, I mean saturated fats. So in fats, we have three types. We have saturated, polysaturated, saturated. Saturated fats would be like cheese, butter, or animal fat. So these are the ones that. But if we look at something like almonds, for instance, or walnuts, or maybe like fat from salmon, these are not bad, like we have them with our carb meals. Second one, I want you guys to focus really on this one because this is not so often talked about. This is one of the reasons why nowadays we have more diabetic people than ever, which is stress. So let's talk can cause diabetes. Like you might think, what's the relation to, right? How stress? Well, so first of all, about cortisol. So cortisol is the hormone released in the body best. And if we go 10,000 years ago, people in response to danger. So let's say like a cyber tooth tiger is like attacking people in the middle of the night. Back then, the body's natural response was to release cortisol. And what cortisol does, it will elevate your adrenaline level, it will elevate your heart rate, and it will speed down energy. So when cortisol is high, our body, like we have something called glycogen stores, which are the stored muscles, and we have the fat stores, which is the stored fat within the body. When cortisol levels are elevated, the breakdown of fat stores and muscle glycogen will be way faster than normal. And within like few minutes, like blood sugar will go up and also fatty acids flowing around, floating around in the blood. And because that's like our body making that to escape or fight back. And that's in a natural scenario. Now imagine you are sitting at your desk, you are your bank loans or thinking about rent or work problem, or you have problems with your boss, and you now you have your body. The body response is the same. Like you are stressed, response cortisol is the liberation or the breakdown of energy within the blood. So now we have high blood sugar, we have glucose floating, we have fat or fatty acids floating in the body, but we are just sitting to burn off that energy. We are not stressed for like let's say someone is to run from danger, like 30 minutes at most, but the way life is nowadays, we are stressed for hours on end. So like all day stress stuff, and like our blood sugar is elevated the whole day, and our pancreas are like pumping out insulin to accommodate that increase. So in that sense, actually stress is even worse than food, because worse come to worse, like insulin for a certain time, then it will go back to baseline. But stress will keep blood sugar elevated all the time. So stress is a real devil here, and it's probably the reason why we have more diabetic people than ever nowadays. And of course, like activity, especially like hard exercise on a daily basis, is one of the big reasons. Because assume let's assume someone is stressed out, right? And they have like high blood sugar levels most of the time. If that person is active, you know, like that energy is burned, or at least some of it is going to be burned. And also certain types of exercise resistance training will break down glycogen stores. So like you will always have room to store extra energy, without having it sitting in your bloodstream and raising your blood sugar and insulin levels all the time. Super important. So now, let's go to the next one, which is also pretty interesting. The link between obesity and diabetes. I think it probably everyone knows this, but like the likelihood of developing diabetes is massively impacting by someone's weight. The more overweight you are, like the more the obesity uh, like the higher your chance is of like getting diabetes. And according to the NHS, I always pronounce their name wrong, the NHS, which is the National Health Sector. So the chance of having type 2 diabetes is 5 times higher individuals compared to those in the healthy weight range, and accounts for percent of the risk of diabetes for those without genetic predispositions to it. So basically, have the family, and like you follow poor lifestyle habits, that will increase your chance by 80 to 85% of getting type 2 diabetes. Now, to see on the spectrum between like a healthy and like obese, one easy way is to calculate your BMI. So, Shane, can you link for everyone so they can like calculate the chat box or like body mass? When you calculate your body mass index, like if you are between 22 and 25, that's like the optimal weight, but even 27, 28, that's very decent. But once you go above 30, starts to get more and more dangerous. If you have a BMI above 35, that's like a danger signal. That's like like making noises. It means you have to lose weight. That is one of diabetes, being pretty well to bad lifestyle habits such as eating carb food and having a lot of stress and not exercising enough. Now, we have this one, we talked about it, that children up to the age of toward diabetes by the hypertrophy of beta cells in response to increased sugar consumption during childhood. Please stop feeding. Yes, insulin sensitivity, and they can use sugar for energy, but give them carb sources that are more moderate. Like give them oats or beans or maybe like instead of giving them chips and candy, especially candy. Like every now you see kids, they're eating candy all the time. Yeah. I think that's like to do for your kids, and trust me, kids can or will be more energetic eating slow digesting carbs such as oats or even pasta for that sense. Like pasta is way better than candies for kids because like their bodies are very good carbs, so it won't affect them as badly. But sweets and junk food, like don't give them much of it. Now, how to protect ourselves from diabetes? The winning equation? Well, the winning equation is A, losing weight, and B would be a healthy lifestyle would equal into, yeah, reversed diabetes. And there is actually one thing about losing forgot to mention, which is inflammation. And this is probably doctors like don't ever talk about this, but our body's natural response to anything unusual is inflammation. So if someone shoots, there will be a lot of inflammation, right? Eat sugar, you will have an inflammation to it because the body recognizes that as something bad. So even like eating junk food will cause us to have not the same inflammation as getting shot by a gun, obviously, but we will have some degree of inflammation. And the more inflamed we are, the more cortisol we release, which if you remember, we said that cortisol will basically liberate or increase the breakdown of energy stream. So having more inflammation, having will lead to having throughout the day. So important healthy weight range because fat cells, they are like inflammatory themselves in opposite to muscles. Like muscles, they are only inflamed when excess cells, they are always inflamed. They are always inflamed higher than normal. So now, is diabetes well, the answer will depend when you are currently on your journey with it. So say someone, remember resistance. If you are pre-diabetics, it's like 100% by altering like the bad lifestyle habits and stick. As a matter of fact, I think necessary work to reverse it and go back like blood sugar levels. Have the luxury of many of your favorite food moving for without fearing getting diabetic. That's why the earlier we catch, so if we are diagnosed as pre-diabetics, we follow like a healthy lifestyle, like a healthy diet, lowering carbs, and an organized training program and organized supplement program, and we go healthy ranges of blood, we will be that we the blood sugar levels, eating some of our favorite food. Because like everyone loves to eat sweets, at least for me, like I love my sweets, I love my donuts. I like to eat that most of the time. I think, like by following a healthy lifestyle for a long enough period of time, I managed to allow myself to do that without getting any blood sugar issues. Like pre-diabetics, you are not into trouble yet. You are if you start acting soon enough. Now, for category two would be early diabetics, and this is people who had diabetes for, let's say, less than 5 years. Like I would, I would even say like less than 10 years, because the funny thing about diabetes is like it doesn't have an immediate side effect. So like I can have diabetes and not know it until I have some other disease and I go to the hospital and say, oh, wait, you have diabetes. And that could be like 5 years later, right? So usually most people discover later, they don't discover that they have diabetes or they are pre-diabetic early enough. So I would say if you had been diagnosed with diabetes for less than 5 years, super high chance of actually reversing it. A good example would be my mom. My mom actually managed to diabetes within a 6 month period of time. So she was diet, she was put on so healthy diet, increasing your exercise is going to help reverse it or manage diabetes better. Not into managing whatever he wants, pills. And yeah, he's like going like decline in a declining road, unfortunately, and he's a little bit stubborn. But my mom, like she took it seriously. Like she followed like a never deviate from that. She has strong will. And in her second visit to the endocrinologist, so after he did the test and he said, "Wow, your blood sugar are normal." So like blood sugar or like your fasting blood sugar levels for me for the next month. And let's see that for the next month, she never one of blood sugar or fasting blood sugar measurements. So the doctor said, like, you no longer have diabetes, like your blood sugar level of metformin. That was about a year and 2 months ago. Did stick not as like straight back when she was trying to reverse diabetes. But since then, she never had any issues with it. She never needed to use the pills again, and she's like just enjoy. She managed to lose weight during the process. She's out of weight. My mom is a heavy woman, and that shows you how like building fall. Now, let's go to the category three. So those who had diabetes for a while. Is a little bit. So this will be like a very long time. But let's say the doctors put them on meds. In this case, honestly, like it's hard to reverse diabetes. Like it is not unheard of. It is not unheard of. But let's say the percentage of it happening is the other cases. It's like this. But following of proper lifestyle habits and supplements, it will slow down. Diabetes starts slow, like with me, being thirsty all the time or going to the toilet many times. Side effects keep getting worse and worse and worse. Then you will start to get numbing on your like food, especially these. Then you will start to get impaired sight, like your sight will impaired, and it will keep getting more and more in extreme cases, like you will lose basically senses in your foot and also in your lower, and that can cause foot amputation. One of the worst side effects that some from diabetes. Like I know my grandfather, in his last few years, he like literally lost sense, like broken an object. It will like cause him a heavy hit, like he will be bleeding all over, his scalp, and he won't notice it. You have a scratch, like you are bleeding, he won't even notice it, losing blood, so he could realizing what happened if he so in his case, like he didn't even manage to get the surgery for foot amputations because he but yeah, over like the more basically you ignore it, this more serious. So usually if you even if you use metformin but you still eat way more carbs than you should, again you can diabetics to type 1 diabetics by exhausting your beta cells, and you will require the use of insulin. Insulin is not fun, right? Like poking yourself like every 2 or 3 hours or every, in your belly or like wherever you want to like pin yourself. I think themselves to get in, especially that diabetes is not cancer. It's not like AIDS or any of those dangerous diseases. It's totally the real or the right lifestyle habits. So start acting, it will lessen the damage from diabetes. Later, your chance will be reversal. Now, diabetes or how to reverse diabetes, although potatoes are not part of the equation. So let's first talk this, and we will start talking diet. And habit number one would be obviously eating balanced diet. And let me lowering carbs. Now, one of the other unfortunate realities. Someone who does not have diabetes or predisposition to it, for them, a healthy balanced diet will mean protein and fats. But are like think of all the white food like potatoes, rice, flour, grains, bread, and that goes to brown rice, whole wheat grains, and carbs. So proteins will be in fish, salmon. As in the subcontinent, you have kangaroo meat, which I think is one of the best meats to have in a diet. It tastes like steak, and it has so it's like the perfect steak. Also, eggs. Eggs are one of the protein sources. Now, your fats will be oils, butter, animal fat, nuts, fats. So, for someone with diabetes, a healthy balanced diet will be a diet moderate in fat, high in vegetables, low in carbs. And this is another one, which is adjusting carbohydrate into activity level. Now, this is big. This is big one because if we go to the American Health Ministry website, they recommend 40 grams of carb if you are or if you have type 2 diabetes. I think is insane. Carbs. That's a lot of carbs. Like for someone that have type 2 diabetes, a person does not excess. I think like 40 grams of carbs, that's a lot. That's a lot. So basically, we should adjust carbohydrate consumption. So let's assume person A type 2 diabetes, or let's say person A is pre-diabetic, right? They don't
There is a
exercise
better way
much,
to
like
make
they
money
walk
with
daily basis. They play a
Welcome to the trial
soccer
site
game
News
or
Roundup.
tennis game like once a week with friends. For that person, 50 grams of carbs a day is enough. Like you don't need more than that. You don't need more than that. Otherwise, you'll be asking for trouble. Now, let's say person B also have type 2 or pre-diabetic, but they go to the gym for instance on the weekend and walk their dogs. That person could eat 150 grams of carbs, maybe to 180 grams of carbs, and they will still be okay because they are burning a lot of that energy, excess glucose. So this is very important. So you will not believe like if you like Google and search how much carbs within certain food that we eat on a daily basis, like but to give you a reference, so a slice. So if we take a look at sliced bread, just one slice, right? Just one slice have about 15 to 17 grams of carbs. So basically three of that. And now, for people who like pasta, like 50 grams of pasta, you won't even feel like so small that you will not anything. So that's why it's like better sources of carbs like beans are very good. Honestly, vegetables should be the main source of carbs. The next one, again, we talked about this and high fat foods at the same time. So lasagna, burgers, mac and cheese, sweet. So basically anything that tastes very good, probably foods like they taste good. Anything that tastes too sweet or too nice, it's too bad, you know. So I think with diabetes, like you should do the best or you should do power to stay away from most of the time. Now, if you party once every 3 months and you want to eat a little, do so, and supplements will help you with that. Like we will talk about that. But like if you are doing that like twice a week or 3 times, good idea. That's not a good idea. And like metformin or any other thing is not going any favors. Now, another important one, adding protein and vegetables to every meal. So when we eat it, each food has something called glycemic index. Of how much insulin is needed, you know, like to to account for that amounts of carbs and to shuttle it in. Reference a scientist use is white bread. So white bread of 100, which is by the way the same glycemic index of white sugar. So can you believe this? White sugar, white bread, they have the same response. Insulin 100. And now if we add protein, chicken has about 31 to 32. I think chicken breast is 30. We add it to white bread, it will balance it out. So divided by 2 will give, it will lower the to 65. Now let's add kale, which has like 15 or 20. It will lower it even more. So adding vegetables and proteins will lower the glycemic index from, and thus it will lower blood sugar response to that meal. So it's very important. It's very important. And also when you add like protein and vegetables, the right way to eat our meals would be start with vegetables, then eat protein, then eat if you are going to eat them. So don't like and eat, but start with vegetables, protein, then at the end. And another useful one, I think one, which is add spice meals. That's curcumin. Curcumin is probably one of the best ones here because curcumin is it's anti-inflammatory, so it will reduce inflammation. And remember, we said that inflammation in cortisol, which will cause spikes in blood sugar levels by liberating energy stores. So using curcumin within your meals is an awesome way, to like lower inflammation. But the sad thing is that we need to eat a lot of curcumin. That's why we add black pepper every time we use curcumin. Will improve the digestion or the bioavailability of curcumin by 3,000%. Let's say, to get the benefit, you will get the same benefits from 30 grams of curcumin using 1 gram if you just add a little bit of black pepper. That's Now, I want to make a clear point here. So I'm not you like take coke as the magic drug that will like make you lose fat and improve inflammation, like all those bigger claims. It's helpful. It's helpful. It's a spice. It's like the spice of your life, right? It's just like the cherry on top, right? Like it helps, but it's not like the end all be all. I think another thing I forgot to mention about curcumin is that curcumin will increase the production, or it will speed up the production of glucagon. Glucagon is the antagonist to insulin. So usually when we eat a carb meal, I will produce insulin. Insulin will get to a certain level within a certain time, depend on the carbs. It will go like a bread. It will go this high this soon. It will go this high over like 2 hours maybe. And while insulin is going up, glucagon is going up. Unfortunately, glucagon is slower than insulin. We ate white bread and insulin went up instantly. Glucagon getting there. And once they same concentrations, that's when insulin goes down. Congestion will speed up, the secretion of glucagon, and thus insulin will go down faster after a meal. It will go down after a certain meal. Another spice that I personally love, which is cinnamon. Cinnamon, its mechanic of action is simpler. It will just like, but cinnamon is way more tasty than curcumin and black pepper, I think. And we add our coffee, we can add to our tea, we can add it to meal, and it will only make it better. Stock up in cinnamon, and the study dosage is 5 grams. So a sprinkle, well, not grams. If we want the benefits, use 5 grams. Study dose. Now let's talk about I'm here going to maybe shock a little because let's talk about, first of all, what is not. So yesterday I was talking with this about this with Brad. So walking or like taking a stroll walk to the grocery store or walking your dog, that is is burning energy, but that does not qualify as exercise. So we need a certain intensity for exercise. By the two modes of exercise, we have aerobic, we have anaerobic. Aerobic would be anything between 55 to 65% of our maximum heart rate. So for someone who is 40 years old, let's use an easy number. Our maximum heart rate, we usually calculate it, it's 222 minus our. So if someone is 40, like maximum will be 182. Now, 55% of that beats per minute, right? So if you are doing a walk and like your heart rate is 7, it does not qualify as cardio exercise. Okay. Now, let's talk about resistance training. Training is more important for people with diabetes and basically for anyone looking to get or stay into a good shape. So walking 20 minutes 3 times a week, that's good and all, but it's not nearly as resistance training. And the resistance training don't necessarily mean lifting weights here, but talking about mode of training that will get you into the anaerobic zone. The anaerobic zone is 75 to 95% of your heart rate. Let me use my phone. I think my calculation skills are not that good. So let me use. So basically, someone who is 40, we said that he has a maximum heart rate of 182. So 75% of that would be 136. 95% 72 size mode that will raise your heart rate between 136 and 102 beats per minute is considered anaerobic exercise, and it could be considered as a very important because it's going to deplete glycogen stores. So aerobic training use fatty acids, but anaerobic training uses glucose as its main fuel. So it's going to use any going to deplete your glycogen stores. And when we have stores, we always have a place to shuttle, excess glucose from the blood. So basically, when we ingest food, remember we said earlier that like our body will like pump up insulin, but cells would refuse to take the extra because like they are already saturated. But when we do forms of anaerobic training, especially resistance, those will be depleted and they will soak up those nutrients, take them. And the more repeatedly the creating for whatever or like any amount of we basically avoid problem by doing anaerobic exercise. And again, for this to work, we need to reach a certain intensity. So basically going, to the gym, doing a squat and sitting for 5 minutes to the next person. Yeah, that is a resistance training, but you are not using a lot of glycogen stores doing that, right? You are not using at least the same glycogen doing circuit training, right? So a certain intensity is required to achieve this effect. Also, might sound like I'm hating on aerobic exercise, jogging, walking. I'm not. That's actually to basically lower your sugar levels because like cannot do anaerobic exercise all the time. Like we are going to be really fatigued and we will not be able to recover. So another keep our blood sugar levels under check is to do a cardiovascular walking with an ample speed of 3 to 4 kilometers per hour. It could be riding a bicycle. It could be going for a jog. It could be maybe like into a place or a weather that allows you to do so. So that is also very important. And also another useful tip that we can use walking is do after your biggest meal of the day, or let's say your heaviest meal on carb day. So let's say your lunch is basic carb meal. Don't take a nap after lunch or like don't sit and watch TV. Go for 20 that and it will like quickly lower your blood sugar levels to baseline and it will avoid you many times. Let's talk about stress. We established that stress is bad for our blood sugar level. Now, stress management on person depending on preferences and what not do. One thing I cannot do, but that is very helpful, is meditation. So, meditation, if you can do that, if you like it, it's awesome. Like to be it will lower your anxiety and stress about future, about the past, and basically allow you to feel calmer. Another way is getting enough sleep. Our sleep deprived, automatically our levels will be above baseline. And another way, which is my personal favorite, is getting outdoors, especially like get in touch with like nature. It's scientifically proven that seeing the color green or the color blue, it's calming. It will like help your brain to calm down, it will anxiety, breathe of a fresh air and just relax. And I would say like do this at least once, like go to a forest or go for a walk in the park where there are many trees, go to the beach. Also, another thing is mobility and functional training. And what this will do is basically it will be more flexible and like instead of like as we are we learn or like when we stretch and like get our muscles to basically relax, it will lower our stress and anxiety level. And another thing is using recommended supplements to manage stress. So what about? We will talk about those. We talk about insulin sensitivity or like glucose disposal agents. This means that are supplements that will help your body uptake nutrients from the bloodstream and use them for energy rather than keeping them in the bloodstream or store them as. You guys are probably familiar with metformin. Metformin is the daddy of glucose dispersal agents or GDAs. And there are other ones. And let me introduce you to berberine. So this is metformin's cousin, right? Metformin was discovered in the, I think, century, as early as the 17th century, and it was used for blood sugar and type 2 diabetes since the 1960s or the 1950s, I think. Berberine is a recent addition. Berberine was first used to treat like digestive in like all Chinese medicine, but it was always used for digestion until in 19 discovered that treating patients with digestive issues with berberine improved bile. And scientists learned that berberine does the same thing as metformin, which is activate AMPK, and uh, I think it's adenosine monophosphate protein kinase. So is basically the body cells. So more AMPK, or like turning our body to use energy efficiently, lowering the number of ATP created and like clearing up old ATP, and thus allowed for a better usage of energy. Berberine does that. Berberine turns on AMPK, and it's even better. It's even better than metformin. And let me tell you why it's better than metformin. It has negative impacts on exercise adaptations. So if you are someone getting toned, in a sense, having some like a little bit of muscle, especially for men, losing fat, if you go to the gym and you eat metformin right after, negate the during your training, because metformin will basically turn off mTOR. mTOR is the like the gene expressor. So metformin will turn off mTOR and thus activating patients to exercise. Berberine does not do that. So berberine is better. Like it turns on AMPK, it does not turn off mTOR. Also, for extended periods of time could affect the kidneys, especially the carnitine level. Like that checked often when you are in metformin. Now berberine has its as its heartburn. Also, some people might not tolerate it well. That's where it's better to start using it at slower dosage of maybe 300 milligrams to 500 a day, then progress to the recommended dose of 500 milligram 3 times a day. But yeah, berberine probably better than metformin, and it's the superstars of GDAs. Another one is alpha lipoic acid, or ALA. This is an amino acid that will lower blood sugar levels. Another one, oh, this is a new one. This is probably the newest of the bunch, which is C3G or C3. This is like a natural component found in anything that is reddish blue. So think of blueberries, think of black. Uh, it's extracted from those, and it does not only but it also make old fat cells kill themselves, and it stops like younger fat cells from developing into adult fat cells. So it's supplements to add. Chromium, also lowering blood sugar level, is great for inflammation. Remember, inflammation causes higher cortisol level, which causes. So these are the supplements that will help with glucose management. Now, of course, you don't need to use all of them at once, except for which like probably need to be used. All the others are interchangeable. Now for stress management, honestly, like a lot of supplements are used for that. For me, I found the rhodiola to be like really effective, especially for like brain-related stress, like thinking too much. And of course, magnesium, especially before bed, it's very good to improve sleep quality. And like an improved sleep will automatically equal lower stress and anxiety levels. And yeah, so at Q Gym, so we have a health that we consider ourselves to be expert on the matter, and we will help to reverse diabetes. So if you decide to work with Q Gym's team, what would for blood sugar levels and how to compare it against your activity, interpret the results for you, tell you what is exactly happening, what should you exactly do, and what should you change. Number two, you are going to personalized diet plan that is designed to accommodate your energy needs, because remember, we said not all the people amounts of carbs or calories in that sense. It will also take into account your preferences, your ethnicity, and your gut health. So generic diet given to 300 people before you acknowledge it, cabin. Now, your personal coach also will take you through using improve insulin sensitivity because all training equals when it comes of eliciting a certain response within the body. And number four, you are going to supplement plan insulin function. And so that would be like using one of the supplements we mentioned before. Also, when it comes to like an important thing is personal or personalization. People respond the same way to the supplements. So like our coaches will basically look into your response to is anything that is not working or maybe causing any harms, like they will be able to change that to a better compound. Also, we will give you basically checkups at the start of every workout data, the weigh-ins, the waist and hip measurements, any possible digestion issues, any possible weight fluctuation, and we will investigate all the irregular occurrence. But this is not going to be easy for most people, right? Here and but you know that you are not in this fight alone, so you are supported by committed coaches, and like we take this, are going to help you power through it. And if you choose to work with us, we also expect, which is to be coachable. That means like do and do what we tell you, not like it or 70% of it or 60% of it. That always think of it like this: 100% result, commitment, 10% results. So it's like you either committed or not. So if you are not committed, like honestly, I'm not sure if we can like help you at all because like it only works if you are 100% committed. Also working hard without complaint. So yeah, that does not mean like we will tell you to do crazy things, but basically like we want you to endure, especially the dieting process of it, because like for many people the diet might be too hard or too different from what they are used to, but it is what needs. Only then we can succeed in this effort to help you reverse diabetes. Like if if you commit to the process, what we your diabetes more than 5 or 10 years. So, this thing with diabetes is we either succumb to it and take most of our lives or take action back our lives. Now, thank you for your attention. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. I think my presentation is done here. I think my presentation is done. So let me give the word to Brett.